Okay, so welcome to the latest episode of U+WE Teachable Moments. This week we've got another level 1 BMS student, which is nice to get a kind of a post-year but also post-assessment perspective on just how everything's been going. So we've got Veronika. How you doing?
Hi,
It's taken a
Chris.
while for us to sort this out, hasn't it?
It has. It really has. It's not easy when you've got kids and all the other sort of I don't know what to say, obligations of a
I
parent and
suppose,
student
but
and
yeah.
everything else. So trying to arrange everything to fall into place. It's quite difficult, yeah.
Well, it's quite not a strange one as such, but it's strange talking to you in that we've emailed a lot and you've been
Yes.
active and engaged in all the right places of the community chat, but we've never actually, I think, seen one another.
No,
Uh,
I don't think we have. No.
no,
I think I'm one of those mums who goes on a school run and she's got 5 minutes to wait in the car. So I type a quick email or, send something on Teams, which my phone has been an absolute godsend for that.
yeah,
Without it, I don't think I'd be able to have been engaged as much as I have.
that's very true. Actually, yeah, I mean, the Blackboard app isn't great on phones. It's almost easier to use a browser
No.
and do stuff there,
Yeah.
but at least you've
Yeah.
got Teams app and Outlook and things like that. So the school run sort of brings us to why I thought you were a great one to talk to because in a challenging year, you elected to start university when you already have virtually all the challenges that well, not even a new student, but that someone studying could have, being a mature student
Well,
and a mum, you know.
yes, I've progressed from the foundation to level 1. So it was kind of a natural progression. I didn't want to defer or anything like that. And in September, when we first started, it kind of looked like it's not going to be too bad. My oldest son started his A levels, and he had, I think, about two and a little bit of months of on campus teaching himself. So I thought, oh, that's all right, it's doable. Little one's going to be at school, big one's going to be at school. Well, little did I know, it didn't quite work that
Yes.
way.
Yeah, they teased us for a couple of months, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes, they did, and that's what kind of I thought, okay, yeah, I can do it. And then we had the lockdown in November, and that's kind of when things started to go downhill a little bit, because my teenagers college has decided to not do any on campus teaching at all, so they've had to go onto online stuff, which I know it probably sounds not foolish, but trying to have two live connections to live teaching with the internet connection that we have
Because
has
you're in the
been
middle of
quite.
nowhere, aren't you? You
We
mentioned.
are, we are.
Yeah.
We live, we really do live in a rural area. There's only about 10 houses around us. So if there is any kind of a fault with anything, we are the last on the list for things to be fixed. So trying to have internet connection that would cope with two laptops being connected to live sessions has been tricky. And then obviously we've had the lockdown extended after Christmas. So then my 7-year-old came to it as well to be homeschooled.
Of course.
So trying to juggle my own studies, trying to juggle helping my 16-year-old, nearly 17-year-old, who is autistic. So for him, the change to sixth form was a huge one anyway, without it being complicated by lockdowns and remote learning. Then I have got 7-year-old, sorry, who is autistic as well, but on the other side of the spectrum, he's ADHD. So trying to entertain him for more than 10 minutes, not easy, especially when you have got 39 minutes to do a human anatomy and physiology exam. So
Oh, my
trying.
monthly exams did not help there then. You're like,
No,
right at the
no,
end
they
of
really
year.
didn't. They really didn't. Because I sort of set him up. It funny. I would sort of get him a little array of snacks and things that I think he can possibly want. Shut him in the bedroom and say, just can. Our mummy will come and fetch you when the exam has finished. And about, I don't know, 10 minutes in he comes with the most ridiculous requests in my mind, very plausible and valid to him.
Yeah.
But which kind of really threw my exam up in the air, because I was then literally counting seconds, and I think one of the exams I've submitted it with about 3 seconds to go. That was quite a hair-raising moment. um so yeah, I think for me, it wasn't necessarily the way that the course was delivered that was the issue. It was all the extenuating circumstances around it that I've had to factor in, to do all the stuff that I had to do. Also, I've had health issues which haven't helped.
What's the
I've been
knee? Yeah,
Yeah, my knee. I've got, to use the correct terms, I've got my left medial meniscus cracked from side to side.
very good.
So, and because again, previous lockdowns, the NHS is on such backlogs. An awful lot of administrative errors actually have happened when trying to organise appointments. They've been cancelled. I mean, my last appointment was meant to be on the 21st of May, and I had a letter to say it was cancelled. So I rang them, and they say a patient cancelled it, which I was sort of a bit confused about. I said, no, I didn't. Oh, sorry, it was an administrative error. So again, things get postponed, and it's so frustrating, because in the meantime, I was on quite strong, and I still am on quite strong painkillers. So that's not making the situation any easier. So it's just an amalgamation of all sorts of little factors that make this quite a difficult year. I mean, I've enjoyed the contents of the course, but I genuinely cannot wait to go back to on-campus teaching, because it's been such hard work, really hard work. When you're at home, there is always something that needs your attention more, that you can't put off, especially when it's children. So when I'm on campus, it's me time. It's time that I can dedicate. I know it sounds really sad, but
No,
it
it's
is me
it's it's
time.
almost like a far more important but larger version of when you go to the loo and you think, ah,
Yeah.
5 minutes apiece.
Yes.
Um,
No, doesn't happen.
yeah,
It's I think throughout the lockdown, it's been the little ones. A shop trip has been like me time, that
yeah.
sort of stuff, grocery shopping. So I am looking forward to being able to go back into normal teaching, where even though if we don't have lectures, I still stay until school pickup time on campus, and I can do my work that I can't do at home. And that has been so missing from my routine this year.
I think it helps with
Um,
time management as well, doesn't it? I
it
often say in
Yes,
induction, not treat uni like a job, but go 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and then have a life. Clock off at 5,
yeah,
because that's what you're going to have to do once you graduate. You're not going to be able to, I mean, you can, staff do work at midnight all the time, but generally in jobs going, well, can I have that meeting at 3 a.m. because that's when I'm best. It doesn't really
yeah,
work that way.
yeah,
So that's quite a healthy way to do it. It's funny you mentioned about sort of the time spent on campus and how that changes things, because a colleague was just saying to me that there's been a case of COVID at her son's preschool, so he's got to be home for
yeah.
10 days even, and when you have those bits in between, well, not in between, when schools were open for little bits, and then there was a
Yes,
case of something, you're like, oh my God, we just had a week of relative normalcy with the kids in a
normality.
bit more
Yeah,
freedom. I suppose for you it must have been well, like you say, the content being delivered online was okay, but it must also have been quite beneficial, because say uni had been able to have more on campus stuff, like we could have had more practicals or whatever it could have been, where there's more expectation to come in, the schools being locked down forces you to stay home, and then you go like,
yeah.
right, well, I literally can't come in for the practical,
that
but if
was
the
that was the
opportunity
one
is
thing
there.
as well. Yes. If we were able to come in on the campus, then I would have needed some kind of childcare for the
Yeah,
little one, at least, so I could come in. So again, that would have been another kind of headache. I mean, practicals for me online were virtually impossible, because having the little one around, I mean, exam, I could just about manage the 39 minutes to just about kind of get around it. But a practical, which is like 2.5 hours sometimes, when it overruns or there are questions or what have you, or you have to really focus on what you're doing, that was impossible for me, which is where I fell short in anatomy and physiology. I just wasn't able to log into the practicals because I was getting so frustrated with my son, myself. I don't know if I've mentioned I have depression, and for me, a lot of ambient noise, if you like, when I'm trying to focus on something, completely derails me. I usually deal with it when I'm on campus with noise cancelling headphones, if
Not
that makes
possible to do
sense.
online, really. Yeah.
No, no, it isn't. That's the thing. You can,
Anti-technology, that. Yeah.
yes, you can just about sort of mute the conversation or mute the lecturer, but then you don't know if you're missing something important.
Yeah.
So that in itself poses a problem that kind of makes you a bit more anxious and a bit more all over the place. So I mean, I really struggled from that aspect as well. And it's not because I'm sort of intolerant or don't take on board the fact that others have got questions. My mind, and the only way I can explain it is once I'm focused on something, all the other noise around me is so much amplified in my head that I can't focus on anything else. So for me, online practicals were hell from that respect.
Which is a good thing. It demonstrates the need to learn by doing, not learn by listening. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I'm very much a doer, very much a doer. It's kind of, I remember it better. It
Oh, yeah.
seems to stick in my head a lot better than that. So it, uh, this year I felt the delivery was great because you could pause it if you watch the recorded stuff. You could go and do your thing, come back to it. But I felt without the sort of contact, face-to-face contact, and the on-campus teaching and the Q&A sessions that kind of almost follow from the situation itself. I felt that for me, the delivery this year was disjointed, but it wasn't for the lack of trying from lecturers. It
Mm.
was just the situation itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose you need what from an accessibility point of view for things like the noise cancellation, having the ability to add subtitles after the fact for the
Yeah.
recording is good, but it doesn't help you in the live session.
No, that's
I
it.
remember like Michelle saying about there being too many voices at once or needing,
Yes.
the transcript and things like that. And so depending on the platform that we use, even wanting to engage in the live session, much like wanting to engage with an on-campus practical, but you can't because it's school time, it really throws things off. And then for parents in particular, say we, because I've fallen afoul of this myself a bit, the 3 o'clock where you got to go to school, and I've literally carried on
Yes.
a lecture on my way to school, so I switched to my phone on
Yeah.
Teams and carry on that way because you've got to pick the kid up, and it's you haven't got after school care every day. And Thursdays used to be the day that we could do quite easily because there was mud pies, but there wasn't this year, and I didn't have a place in after school club. So, yeah, well, not to worry, I'm at home,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'll have a thing, and then you get thrown out of it again. So that
Yeah.
that focus gets lost by so many ways.
It really
Um,
does. And it's not just the school thing, it's simple things like doctor's appointment. I think it was one of the sessions that we were supposed to do. And I took my son to a pediatric
yeah,
appointment. The consultant was held up in A&E by neonatal emergency, and it threw the clinic off by about an hour and a bit. And then that delayed me. And, it's these things. It's normal life. But when you are trying to adapt something that is face to face to online and make it work around everything else, you realize just how difficult it can be.
yeah. I mean, you have more. It's a frustrating time to do it for students as well, whatever your circumstances might be, whether you've got care responsibilities or frequent doctor's appointments or chronic illness or whatever it might be. Because you kind of imagine uni as being that place where life won't get in the way as much because you're supposed to be able to go, here's 3 years of my brain, and then
Yes.
I'll do all the other stuff. But whether you've chosen to do study later in life or you've started the big life things a bit earlier, maybe, um, when you suddenly get all that thrown at you, it's very difficult to balance it all. But then
Yes.
when you have examples like that, like yours with so many different challenges throughout the year, let alone the normal school pickups and doctor's appointments, things like that. And then another one of my students who graduated a year ago had so many challenges herself, like things, obstacles to get over, as well as sort of time management stuff and babies and all sorts of things, and still managed to do it. And it does, very unempathetically, I suppose, make me think sometimes the ones that complain they got a lot of deadlines, but they don't have a kid or a partner or a full-time job or a a grandparent that they're the sole carer for. There's some time management stuff that needs working on there, and I don't know
Yes.
if you feel that way a little
Well,
bit as well.
I do, because I don't know if I've said I'm going through quite an acrimonious divorce at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've had to sort of juggle things like personal counselling, which I had through GRASAC due to the nature of the relationship. So it's been trying to schedule my counselling sessions, because it's a charity who are dealing with huge amounts of women in my position. I had to sort of make sure that it fits around all the other appointments that they have with all the other women. So yeah, it's a lot of personal issues to overcome. And I mean, I have had, after the exam period had finished in May, I had a period of about a week where I just couldn't do anything. The way that I deal with my sort of dark depression days is I shut myself in my bedroom in the quiet and darkness and don't really interact with anything. And I did that for about a week.
Bit of sensory deprivation, I guess, a bit like say with the noise cancellation. I mean,
Yes.
obviously in that you've only got your own internal thoughts to focus on, but at least you're shutting out all the other problems. And
Outside, yeah,
yeah,
very much so. And to be fair, um, when it comes to dealing with those problems, for me, uni life was brilliant because I could almost compartmentalize it. And whilst I was on campus, that was it. Children were in childcare in various places. They were being looked after. They were okay. If needed be, I could ask friends to pick up or step in, but I was away, removed from all the outside bombarding of phone calls from the solicitor, and all the other bits and pieces that come into it. I could just be myself and focus on myself. As selfish as it may sound, because when I'm at home, I'm everything else other than a student.
and it's much harder as a student compared to a staff member, because you're right. It's not selfish at all, because it's much like regular students that 18 to 20-year-olds and whatnot that might not have anything in particular going on. Everyone has stuff going on, but
Of course.
big things. Sort of going, well, this is my 3 years to focus on me and get a thing and learn some skills to go and start life. So I think to have that protected time, you go, right, between these hours, if something happens, yes, I'm on, but otherwise, this is student me, not mummy me or wife me
Yeah,
or whatever it might be.
yeah, very much
And
so.
that's much harder to do in the environment that we've had. I mean, I realized only this morning, because Thursday is the day, obviously it's Wednesday today, but Thursday is the day where we don't have after school care and I just go pick her up. And I only realized this morning, um, despite being the chair of the board of trustees of our school's after school club,
Oh, like me
I
then.
haven't sorted out Thursday for next year because I thought, well, my pies are on, and that's fine. Except my youngest starts next year, and he's going to have probably the same days as my eldest. But still that Thursday issue. Like, oh my God, what if he's not in mud pies? Someone's got to get the lad.
Yeah.
And I've got at least 6 Thursday afternoon lectures in semester one alone. And I'll be on campus, so I can't pop out next year. I kind of forgot that this year doesn't carry into next year. Oh bugger, I've got to fix this quite quick.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's that transition to next year. You're like, oh, it's going to be normal, but I've kind of got used to this year as a semi-normal, or at least a
Yeah.
different way of doing things where there's some degree of structure. I haven't got the structure
Yes.
of running to work, which I desperately need, but I do have the structure of 9 o'clock upstairs for coffee with work friends, like always did on campus. Then the work day, and then there's going to be some kind of kid thing. Then I go downstairs, go downstairs to go get one of the children, and then you come back and you're instantly into tea and snacks and TV and shouting and pajamas and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I keep forgetting next year's going to be back to the blend of
Well, we're
different physical
hoping. We're
locations.
hoping. I
Well,
just,
that's true. Yeah.
I was kind of a bit perturbed when there was a little article. I don't know where it even popped up, saying, "Oh, we're facing a third wave," and I just thought, "No, please,
Yeah.
no! I just want normal,
Yeah.
not another lockdown. I don't think I could cope with another lockdown."
Although, like
Um,
you say, the me time that you kind of feel you need, and like in lockdown, going to the shops was a bit of me time. And because my wife's in the NHS, she had that jump the queue thing for markets
yes,
very early on when it was only supposed to be one person
yes,
went, and
yeah,
only. And she did a few of those, and she's never liked doing the grocery shopping. Generally, I take both the kids on a Saturday and do the food shopping, and it's fun for me. But she's always hated it. And because I wasn't going anywhere, but she was getting to go to work, I said, I'll start doing it. I was like volunteering. She said, but you won't get to jump the queue. I was like, fine, I don't mind queuing for an hour and a half to get in the supermarket. That's some fun time. That's I get a bit of space.
Yes.
So I quite liked that. Um, so like you say, that separation is going to be very different going
It's
into
going to
next year.
be, it's going to be, and it is again now settling my 7-year-old into a different routine yet again. When any kind of a change for an autistic child is an absolute nightmare, he kind of dealt with the situation by becoming very, very clingy. Um,
That's ideal for
and
learning for you.
yes, no. Um, so whenever he isn't at school, he's just kind of attached to me at the hip, which, as lovely as it is, and I know, those times won't last forever, it's so difficult when you need to do something, very simple things like just checking your emails and replying. I found myself, I don't know who I was replying to, but he asked me something about a snack or an ice cream, and I found myself typing about ice cream instead of focusing on what I'm supposed to be replying to. And it's
Nice.
that kind of, my brain is just really struggling with it. And for me, it's not just kind of focusing on this year, because of where I want to go with my studies further. I want to go to graduate medicine entry, or graduate
Okay.
entry medicine. Um, Afterwards. So it's kind of, I have to be on the ball all the time, not just with my studies on the biomed program. There are things that I need to kind of keep in touch with, like, for example, at the moment, it's the whole issue with volunteering time, because it is not available. There are some universities who are offering sort of online courses that you can do that can then be accepted during the application process as an equivalent of volunteering time. I mean, I do have got quite a lot of hands-on time. I worked in healthcare all of my life.
Okay.
So it's not that I'm going into it completely blind and unaware of what's expected of me, but the requirements of the voluntary work are recent, sort of in the last 2 years. So I still need to kind of keep my hands sort of in it a little bit. Um, then it's also finding out the universities near me that do graduate entry that I can sort of get into within driving distance.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be figuring out whether I move closer, or whether I stay where I am till my youngest finishes primary school and move him when he's in secondary school. So it's all these things that I kind of have to factor in. It's not just focusing on this year. So I sort of, I felt that I was sometimes a little bit short in the team's chats when you had students who perhaps were not as engaged as I thought there could be. And I felt,
Yeah.
I feel like a parent, because I guess it possibly was sort of me thinking, they don't appreciate the opportunity to learn like you do. And it is a huge difference between
Absolutely.
students coming in from A levels to being a mature student, because you have got all that life experience and you think, wow, they come across as almost ungrateful, but they're not, because they haven't got the experience. They don't know any different.
Yeah,
But
it's
you
hard to
as
be
an
ungrateful if you
adult,
haven't seen what it
yeah,
is. Yeah.
but you as an adult think you are so lucky to be able to learn and just be able to focus on this. So I think I was a little bit short at times, but it wasn't for not want to get on with people or to being mean, but it's just, I guess, personal circumstances and the situation itself.
Well, it does. I suppose there's, for mature students, you've done something, whether it's a related career to what you end up doing a degree in, and you want that next step to go further in it, or you've worked in something and it through default and it was never what you wanted to do. So you've looked around and determined this is what I want to do, and here's an opportunity to do it. Whereas coming straight from A level is a bit more the next logical step. So
Yes.
it's not a sense of entitlement, but it's more, well, this is where we go and what we do, which
Yes.
which is what I did. I just went straight A level to uni to no break, no year out,
Yeah.
just because it's what you did. Um, so yeah, it's not unreasonable, I think, when you are a mature student to go, you get this isn't, it's not a right to, it is a right to education, but you're choosing to take this next step, which
Yes.
means you should make the most of it. So I can see
Yes.
why, and it is usually the mature students that are um, the ones that do point out, well, this is a great opportunity, right? And they're more
Yes.
engaged generally. There is also, of course, that side of you have gone a bit through life and you're like, right, got to make the most of this one. So they tend to be the ones that ask a lot more questions in class and answer them and volunteer for stuff.
That's what I said to you in one of my emails. I'm so sorry that you hear from me so often. Because you do, and you almost kind of worried that if you don't ask that question, you're going to miss out on something that you need to know.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations, because of my experience, where I've worked, my interest in medicine, my circle of friends mainly being doctors, and knowing what is required of me, I kind of take every opportunity to kind of store the knowledge and compartmentalize it somewhere in my head so I can draw upon it at a later point. So I'm just sort of trying to make sure that I know everything, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, and you kind of want to know it, not so much know it now, but that, like I said, there's that fear of missing out on something you might need later. Whereas
Yes. Yeah.
the other attitude, I suppose, is to go, I miss what they said. I'll get it at the end when it counts, you know. And then there's
Yes.
that in between of being as engaged as you can without overdoing it.
Yes.
Because one big thing about particularly graduate entry medicine is uh, not getting to that point, or if you're going into medicine, it's incredibly stressful to, you know, make or break sort of thing. Can you survive the boot camp of med school? So if you almost break yourself getting there, you know, how much worse will it be? So it's all about managing not the expectation, but going, right, take on that which is necessary and that which you love, but don't do too much of the extra stuff that you think you need to do, because you need to get there in one piece, you know, to be the
Yes.
best,
Yeah.
whatever your next going to be. And that's
Yes.
really difficult as well, I think, to balance. It's still balancing engagement, you know, being
Yes.
there
Very much
isn't
so.
enough, but also working every hour God sends to get it done is also too much, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I love what I'm learning at the moment. I just wish that, like I said, it all boils down to not being to be able to do on campus stuff.
Yeah.
I find myself not motivated, because I am motivated to do what I'm doing now. It's what I've chosen, but having the kind of almost the thirst to dig deeper, if that makes sense. Because when you're at home and you've got a million and one things going on, and you've got to rush to do this and rush to do that, you're just burnt out at the end of the day, and the last thing you want to do is pick up a book.
Yeah.
Or for me, like for example, we were I think it was in one of your announcements about people who haven't necessarily done all the anatomy exams, not having had a first go and then leaving it to the resit period. For
Yeah.
me, there were occasions where I just couldn't do the exam because there was something going on at school, or there was an appointment, or I had to pick a child up. And I think I'm going to have to do mine now in resit, but it wasn't. It was kind of it was out of necessity.
Yeah.
And I am now frustrated that I am in the position, because of my situation, where I have to do it in resits. And if I don't do it, then I'm shafted, if that makes sense. So
Sure.
it's
Yeah. I
kind of,
mean, I suppose my assessment doesn't help. Well, the 6 month exam things doesn't help a huge amount in that regard, because, like you say, if you have to go to resit through a thing happening, which is why we do the best 5 out of 6, I guess there's a bit more of a chance. And then the other side of it is those who either knew ahead of time, because this is the first year of uncapped resits, they knew that the resits would be uncapped. So if they miss 2 because they weren't paying attention to their calendar or whatever, and go, oh, it's too late now, not to worry, it's a free goer. And then they disengage from that point, like, well, no, because you could have made it, or at least do them and have the practice, you know, spin the wheel and see how you
yeah.
do, because then you'll do better in the resit. So that's been a difficult juggle for me, in terms of there's only so much you can do to keep students on board without getting too parenty,
But
and sort of saying, look,
that's
for the
what
love of God, get to class, you know.
that's where I was coming from with the whole. I think I was being a bit harsh. I thought, you know, when people were sort of, I think it was the discussion that we had on Teams about how the future of uni learning, or especially this program, should look. And we were talking about the hybrid lessons, or going back to on-campus stuff, or solely on online stuff, and people were not really engaging. And I got so frustrated because I thought, for crying out loud, we are being asked as how we feel about this, what we want. It doesn't happen very often that
Yeah.
students' views are taken into consideration in such a grand scheme of undertaking of the whole arrangement of a program. And I thought, wow, such a great opportunity. Come on, you know,
Be the
talk,
voice. Yeah.
say what you think, because we have got the opportunity to make it what we want it to be, to a point. And that I found quite frustrating, I won't lie.
It's not surprising. I mean, one reason that I want to be in a position where I can do more to help more people,
Yeah.
but that often takes you outside of teaching, which means you're not in front of regular students all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
And I feel I'm now unrelatable to, because all first years are more than half my age, which means like when I say, have you seen Ghostbusters? They think I mean the 2016 film. Yeah, no, I'm talking Dan
Yes.
Aykroyd and Bill Murray. What are you talking about?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm not relatable to them anymore. So if I'm guessing what I reckon is best for their learning, uh, I'm going to be off base unless I actually ask them. I can't make it up based on metrics or league tables or whatever. It's got to be on, or on the opinions of the most engaged, enthused, that go for everything. It's got to be sort of from everyone, and that's where you hope that voice comes through. Because otherwise, I'm guessing it. But it's got to be a balance, of course, because on the
Yeah.
parent side, there is that what's best for you as well. Like, yes, it would
Yeah.
be lovely if you could choose all your assessments and when you do them. But unfortunately, when you get into a job, that won't exactly be
It's not
always the
how it
case.
works.
And
Yes.
if you make it the option of, the assessment is a presentation, and they go, oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't have any confidence. I want to do it as a poster. And you go, well, that's grand, but in a job interview, you're going to have to talk to another human. You can't always do it as a recording and hope they've asked, you can't prep your
Yeah.
questions ahead of time,
Yeah.
record it and send it, which means we need to build your confidence at speaking. So maybe let's do it a slightly different way. So there is an element of choice and what they feel is best for them to succeed, but also to prepare them. So that,
Yes.
like I say, there's that balance of have your voice and be asked your opinion, and always take that opportunity, because otherwise we'll guess and we'll get it wrong a lot of the time because it's
Yes.
an uninformed opinion.
Yeah. That's the kind of angle I was coming at it from.
Yeah.
And I also sort of felt, again, going back to life experience, thinking, wow, we've got an opportunity to make something. Why don't we all engage? You
Mm.
know, and it felt like that through an awful lot of the lectures, where the kind of Q&A didn't really happen because it was just the same people trying to ask the same questions. And I found myself a little bit sort of on the outside, because I didn't necessarily mind, but I can imagine that someone who likes to be really involved with everyone might, because I am at an age where I am not in with the kids. And the sort of the online chatty bit, or Discord groups or WhatsApp groups, I wasn't part of that. Not necessarily for not wanting to be, or not having the time, because who does have a time for their phone to go bing like
Go
300
crazy all
times
the
in the
time.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Um, I felt that the whole online community doesn't necessarily involve the mature student, whereas when you are on campus, you
Yeah.
find other mature students and you say, oh, do you want to grab a coffee at lunchtime, and what do you think about this, and you have your own little conversations, um, in a way that you can relate to one another a little bit more. But it was quite difficult to find someone in my age group through the online environment, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, because I mean, Discord was a new thing to me, and I'm the digital guy, and I was like, "What the devil is Discord?" And
I
they're all
hadn't
on that.
even
And, oh my
explored
God, the
that one
kids have got
yet.
a new thing. Jesus, I thought it was just WhatsApp was. I thought. So, and you're right, on campus, it's either easier to identify the same, particularly with mature students, because it's going to be slightly
Yes.
more visible, isn't it? But also whoever you end up in a mixed group, but who genuinely want to talk about the learning of different ages and whatnot. because you've accidentally sat next to them in the lecture, and
Yes.
because of the rows you were in, or the practical
Yeah.
group, or sometimes you say, right, get into fours, and then they get into bloody fives, and you're like, I'm sorry, did I misspeak? It was fours, people. And so you move someone to a different group, and they end up chatting to them, and you go, there you go, that's what it's about. Not necessarily going like for like, or not being able to find anyone at all, but just who you end up with, and then you find those
Yeah.
commonalities. That's
Yeah.
so important in the campus thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that I really did miss online, because it was great in foundation, the
Of
first
course, when
part
you've
of the
had it
year.
before,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was, yeah, it kind of, it felt at times being too involved, yet at the same time quite isolated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I genuinely cannot wait to be back next year.
Well, I suppose just almost a final thing, as it were, is because you mentioned about sort of depression, and obviously there's lots going on. Did you, because you already had, I don't know if it's a history of depression or whether it's a relatively recent thing, but
No, no,
presuming
no.
there's some kind
I've
of,
had depression for about, well, I was diagnosed straight after my 16-year-old was born with postnatal depression, and
oh,
I
right.
was in the area that we lived in. We lived in Bath. The postnatal care wasn't great, so I wasn't medicated till quite later on. Then the GP just kind of let me drop off the radar completely. And the one thing in with depression, at least in my case, is if I don't engage, if I don't reach out, it's very unlikely that somebody else will reach out to you. I think it's probably also to do with my cultural background, because I came from a cultural background where depression was, you're just a bit of a wuss.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a kind of battle on both fronts, me desperately needing help and feeling ashamed to ask for help. So I wasn't medicated for about 5 years after my postnatal depression.
Oh, wow.
I am finally now on antidepressants that work. It was quite a difficult journey to get there, but yeah, it's one of those things where I tend to withdraw from the world when I have my down days. So yeah, it was difficult.
And that makes it difficult to, like I say, to ask for help, because when you've got, say, history of some kind of mental health problems, and you've got GP support or counselling, when you come to uni and there is the well-being service, but and this year's a big one where it's overwhelmed. There's not appointments to give to those that have current mental
Yes.
health issues, because you've got everyone with a bit of anxiety or whatnot, making an appointment, and it might only be one appointment. They go, oh, it's just homesickness, or it's just a panic attack, or whatever it might be, and then it's not taken up. But it makes it a hard service to get into when you have ongoing issues, which means you have to rely
Yes.
more on the GP counselling, special service type things. That's quite difficult. And did you find that um, or I suppose because you have struggled with that, asking for help because of the background of feeling that you're not supposed to ask for help, I find that's often an issue with a lot of students who disengage or disappear a bit. And you remind several times, hi everyone, we've got a session this week, a personal tutor session or whatever, or you reach out individually to them and you never get anything back. And there's only so much you can do as an academic to say, what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think there's often, and I was talking to a student earlier today, there's often that feeling that, well, I don't want to bother someone with my problems, or it's not fair to burden an academic because you're there
That's
to teach me.
Yes, I think I've said that in one of my emails to you. I feel like I am burdening someone else. And I think I personally do that when I'm sort of at a point where I feel I can't take any more of this. I I can't. And if I don't do something, it's not going to end well. So that's at a point where I tend to reach out to people.
So it has to
Um,
get to a certain point,
yes,
like has a build up before you do it.
yes,
Because I
yeah,
mean, it depends who you can reach out to. Because not all staff are going to be emotionally resilient
yeah.
or got anything together, because people are people and we've all got things going on. So you might I don't know, not I forget how to put it really, but there might be a particular member of staff that you relate to best
Yes.
just because you like
Yeah.
their teaching style or whatever it might be, but you feel like, oh, I don't want to bring this on them as well. And that person might be someone that's under a lot of stress themselves, or doesn't cope a lot with pressure,
Yeah.
or has had something similar, and has flashbacks or
I
whatever.
think that's something that possibly the more mature students, it's something that mature students have to deal with a little bit more, because again, you have been through certain circumstances and situations in life. You've got kids, and you just think, you know what, I can't, because the other person, they've got a life as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to make them feel like they have to help you sort something out because they've got 400 other students to deal with. And it is quite a difficult balance. And I know we've had the wellbeing services. They do at the moment, I think once a month they touch base, they ring you,
Oh, okay.
and if they can't get hold of you, they sent an email. And I mean, this month I had a phone call during the period where I was in a really dark place, and I didn't answer it because you kind of, it's a very tricky way of explaining it. You feel like you are being bombarded from the outside, and you want to reach out, but you can't cope with having to have that conversation. You
Yeah.
can't cope with having to explain, because it feels like by explaining it, you are reliving the situation.
Is it a
And
bit
that's,
paradoxical that you
yes,
you you kind of need to explain it in your own time, but you're fighting the
yes,
urge to not tell anyone at all?
yes, yeah, yeah. That was my biggest challenge, I think. And also because it's all over the phone, it's done over the phone, it's not done face to face. You then don't always have the same person. So you then kind of think, I can't cope with explaining this to yet another person all
Yeah.
over again, because you're not just explaining it, you are going through those same feelings that you were feeling when you were going through that situation.
Yeah, because at least if it's a pick up where you left off last time,
Yeah.
they don't have to go tell us what's wrong, and you're like, oh, how much time have you got, and how much do I
Yes.
want to relive it?
Yes.
Yeah, I've
And
had that
then,
with a couple of students where, or one in particular that felt like they could talk to me, and they didn't sort of feel that way with other member staff. And I have had various Teams meetings, because video is a lot easier to do,
yeah.
um, where we don't have to go over, so what's the thing, it's like, from last time, how's this going, or is there anything
Yes.
new? And that was a lot easier. It does help though. I mean, my wife would be the first to state it, but me being an emotional robot, that people can tell me anything at all and it doesn't eat at me or whatnot, whether that's I can compartmentalize, or I am just a block of stone, I don't know. But I always try to say to students that you can come to me with anything, because it won't get to me, and unless I have a duty of responsibility to inform the police that you murdered someone, it's not going to emotionally hurt me. So have at it, and use me as a sounding board or whatever. um, but not everyone's like that, and it's knowing
Yeah.
which members of staff you can talk to, because like I say, speaking of well-being, it's hard to get an appointment, or it's a different person, or they have to go through a process. And sometimes you just want to be able to say, oh, what's really happening right now, or what I can't do. So it's identifying those people that can support you there.
Yeah. And
And
for
that's even
me,
harder this year as well.
I've always been an empath. So for me, it's doubly difficult, because I think, you know what, I'm not the only person going through this situation. I'm not the only person who's struggling during the pandemic. So I feel like I can't reach out because I feel selfish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's a catch-22, and I'm hoping that an awful lot of these feelings that I've been feeling during this time are just going to go away, purely by being able to be on campus, be amongst other people, and just be normal,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean,
So
actually, it's fun. On a far more superficial note, I keep thinking that with the old lockdown weight gain. You're like, it's fine. Once I'm back on campus and I'm running back and forth
yes,
again, it'll disappear. I'll have
yes,
another cake now, because it,
yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
it's like
been there.
diet starts Monday, but it's everything will the weight will go when normality kicks in. You're like, no, it won't. It took a very long time to lose it the first time. Running over the
Yeah,
summer's not going to fix it.
yep, yep, I hear you.
Yeah, but but then, like you say, it's funny that I just joked about something so daft when you just said about that empathy of, well, I can't bother this, because everyone's going through this, and whereas it puts a lot of things in perspective, like, oh no, I've put on a few pounds in lockdown, but there are people going through so much more,
Yeah,
and it's weighing up what's important. But
yeah,
then that comes down to people recognizing or accepting it is all right to not be all right.
Yeah.
And therefore you should always ask. If the person goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't now," at least you asked. You shouldn't feel knocked down, because just ask somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's just asking, but that's hard to do. And I don't know if it's easier as a mature student who's maybe had something for longer to go, you know what, I do need to ask. But then you've
I
already
think
said
for
it's
me,
impossible.
because of my depression, I have to get to a point where I just can't take any more on.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things for me. Again, as silly as it sounds, we all have got our little quirks.
yeah,
I know when I start to order too much takeaway for the kids and stop cooking, that's where I need help, because I
yeah.
love cooking. Cooking is my out of situations. Cooking is my relaxing time. And when they have had like 3 takeaways a week, I know I have a problem.
That's quite a good red flag that
Yeah.
you're having a bad week.
Yeah, I've recognized that now, over the last couple of years, when I just cannot be bothered. Not be bothered. That's, again, that sounds like, I hate the word bothered. Um, when I don't have the oomph to do it,
Yeah,
when I feel like, do you know what, I'd rather not eat, and then I think, but it's fine that I don't want to eat. The kids need to eat, so I order a takeaway for them, and then I think, actually, they've had 3 this week. Something's not quite right.
but then there's also that in for everybody, every parent, I think, where there's a bit of, because you said like, they need to eat veg, but then it's a struggle, and you're like, oh, you know what, nuggets, you know. So just
Freezer
there needs
gravel.
to be that oomph. Everyone loses that oomph a bit, but it's interesting to hear the scale that can be,
Yeah.
and therefore how much harder it is to get over.
Yeah.
I think that the whole chat with you has highlighted not so much, like you said, that attitude that you said from your cultural background of bit of a wuss, and we're a little bit too quick. I say we, a bit of a royal we, to sort of say, "Ah, come on now, it can't be that hard," when it's a student that doesn't have anything underlying, because it's that everybody's different, and everyone's tolerance and
Yeah.
fragility is going to be different.
Yeah.
And it can be an extreme, like you've experienced, with so much going on, and it can be, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. College was a breeze, or I just got lucky, or whatever. Whenever students ask me, well, how do I get to this, and how do I get to that, and how did you get your job? Unfortunately, it was a lot of right place, right time, being loud. My year in placement gave me a self mockery that has given confidence bordering on arrogance. I say bordering, it probably is full blown arrogance, but that's all helped with them being able to be loud and solution orientated.
Yeah.
So it's been opportunity. And that's something I don't think we encourage enough in students, to seize the opportunities, which then, that was a fluky full circle, brings sort of back to, for mature students, it's recognizing those opportunities more. And I don't think we recognize that direct entrance from college have an opportunity
Yeah.
um, to make the most of it. I think we as staff need to get better at showing them that, and then that might help more, and help people cope more. Um, which then, of course,
Yeah,
we need to
I
translate
think
to you
so. But
guys.
at the same time, if you think about it, you've not really had much time to organize a course that is so face-to-face based to something pretty much all virtual.
Very true.
And I think, you've had to put a hell of a lot more effort into being as smooth as it has been this year. I think, from what I've had, friends who have been doing online learning, I think I've come out the best. You
That's
guys have
brilliant.
put a tremendous, you guys have put a tremendous amount of work, and I think that was really quite important for me to acknowledge that, because I think you really have pulled it off so well this year. I think we have been very lucky that you have dedicated so much effort to it.
Well, I think other colleagues of mine deserve more credit as such, because they had to actually pivot. For me, I was lucky. It was like I was preparing for the apocalypse for years, because my assessments all been automated and online. I was using Teams before everyone else and all this sort of thing. So I was very lucky. I was like, this is going to be a doddle. But when I did the on-campus lecture, and then it was followed by the on-campus practical the week after, and there was one of the first years was in the prac, and she said, "You're much different in person to online." I was like, "What do you mean?" I thought I was doing all right in the lectures. No, they were great, but you're way more relaxed in person. I was like, man, I thought I was as relaxed as a yoga master in the team's lectures. You know, the stories and the jokes still came out. But if even for me, I was like, huh, I thought I was just being me online. But clearly, the online me is still different from the in-person me, and
I
that's the
think
better version of me.
online you kind of have to be, because you are bringing something that's meant to be done face to face and that's meant to be interactive. You're bringing it to a screen, so you need to be on board a lot more with reining people in and not letting conversation to get away too much because of
Yeah,
the time constraints and everything else. So I think you are kind of, you're more of an operator when you're online
yeah,
than when you're in front of students. It kind of takes you naturally in a situation, but online you just have to manage it with all those extra, variables in play, because you are limited by time, you are limited by connection. I mean, how many times people have had to drop out, even lecturers, out of sessions because their internet cut out
yeah.
or the bandwidth or whatever wasn't working as well. So I think there is a hell of a lot more that you need to take into consideration when you do online lecture than face to face.
And the space as well. Just
Yes.
being in this space because it's very difficult for a room roamer like me to. I mean, I gesture like Emma, but you have to gesture within frame. I can't
Yes.
do this, and that throws me off a bit. Whereas in the room, I'm all over the shop,
Yeah.
and that keeps people's attention like a bright color. Um,
It does. It really does. It's yeah. I to be fair, I can't remember which lectures it was. It was, I think, one infection and disease one. I actually nodded off. It was so embarrassing. I did nod off. It was the one, I think we were talking about cancer. And because I've experienced cancer from, many different angles, various family members at work, colleagues, and having discussions with colleagues and supporting patients and so much stuff, that I was just sat there, and it wasn't going in. It was just washing over me. And I think what didn't help was that the person who was delivering the lecture, their voice was quite flat. I don't know whether it was my connection or what. It didn't. There wasn't much up and down, and I did nod off. But it wasn't
but
because they didn't try hard enough. I want to
sometimes,
stress that.
well, sometimes it is. This year, there's been a little bit of people's mics and things making do with what they had, and
Yeah.
I upgraded mine because I thought it doesn't matter how good a student's speakers are, if the audio going in isn't good, coming
Yes.
out isn't going to be any better.
Yeah.
So I'd need it. But a lot of people have made do. But then some people do naturally have more of a flat voice,
Yeah.
and that's without the visual because a lot of you guys have been working off one monitor, and a lot of staff have been
Yeah.
working off one monitor. So when they go right, the PowerPoint is up, and that's all you're going to see. Um, you don't even get the visual of them, so it's just the voice to carry you, and that's really
Yes.
hard.
Yeah.
And I was watching something earlier. It was a kind of a death by PowerPoint type thing, which annoyingly gave me some ideas that I really should have thought of a long time ago. But there was the guy said, "I am always have been and always will be the presentation. The PowerPoint is my visual guide. But what do we do in online lectures but fill the screen with the PowerPoint, which you've all got copies of anyway that you could be looking at on
Yeah.
a phone or something independent, and we take us out of the equation, which makes it like a really bad audio book with no characters.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
not even accents and voices. It's just the one person.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 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 I hear you. I hear you.
But it's been
Definitely.
fantastic talking to you, and you're the best example of everything, and particularly as you've stayed engaged the whole year. It's been
I've
really
tried my
enjoyable.
best.
Yeah, and it's nice to, as we always say, it's nice to actually see you.
Yes. Yeah.
Because even when I have the full 48 cameras on a lecture, there's 200, it's supposed to be 250 of you, so you never always
You
see
never see
even those
everyone.
that are down the
Yes.
thing, which is
Yeah.
quite good. But that was fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Joining us
Pleasure.
like I've got a crew. Um, and it was good that we managed to reschedule it because, like you
Yeah.
say, life keeps getting in the way.